Okay, guys, I wanted to talk a little bit about Mike Johnson. Specifically, whether or not he's a good pick for speaker. Now, I already made this video once, but I realized after the fact that I kept calling him Gary Johnson, the former Libertarian candidate for president, who before that was a governor, and he was a Republican before he switched it up. Now, Gary Johnson got like 4 million votes in the 2016 election, and that was like the most that the Libertarian Party has ever gotten in one shot. Mike Johnson, on the other hand, completely different guy, and I didn't want to post that because it would be really annoying to have me making that mistake the entire time. So I already talked about how, John James and a bunch of other guys who were voting against Jordan were not rhinos. Now, I kept referring to Buchanan as part of the Freedom Caucus, which isn't true. Buchanan did endorse Donald Trump for 2024, but he's not part of the Freedom Caucus. I don't know how I got that in my head. I thought maybe he was one of the people who voted for McCarthy in the first place, which may still be true. I would have to go back and look at my notes, wherever the hell I put those. But I always got notes scattered all over my house with this kind of stuff. So, Mike Johnson and his voting record. I mean, he's got a pretty good voting record. He's voted against giving Ukraine more aid every single time. Now, if you look back at my Twitter feed, you'll see me defending Ukraine over and over again. That was before I realized what was going on with FTX, and it was pretty naive of me, and I really should have looked into it more at the time. But I'm also not a politician, and I also know my voice wasn't that, and still isn't that important, if I'm all honest. So, I'll kind of give myself a pass on that for defending it so much. But at the same time, I know a guy that's in Ukraine, and I was really upset. I really do not like tyranny, and the invasion really ticked me off, and I got obsessed with it, and I completely got tunnel vision on it, thinking Zelensky was a good guy. And I defended Zelensky for a long time until he finally broke the illusion on me, basically, where he kept pushing over and over again, saying that, hey, if you don't support Ukraine, you basically support Russia. Like that, if you're not with me, you're against me mentality. The same thing that George W. Bush pushed. And I defended George W. Bush for a long time too. Again, pretty naive of me. But going over what exactly came out of his administration, in retrospect, it became pretty obvious that he was not a great president. I think he wasn't nearly as bad as Obama was, but I can admit that I made a mistake, and that just because he was better than Obama doesn't mean that he deserves to be defended like that. But people always make politics way too much of a blue team versus red team mentality, and also people are very critical of these people, kind of forgetting that they're human, kind of forgetting that they make mistakes, because Trump made mistakes too. Did Bush make more mistakes? Yeah, I would say so. And it's time to move on from that kind of politics and move on to fixing our current problems instead of focusing on the problems of the past. Now, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't forget the past. So, for example, for Mike Johnson, he came out right on the day that George Floyd was killed, and he basically said that it appeared that he had been murdered, and he started pushing the whole George Floyd didn't do nothing wrong narrative, which in retrospect ticked off a lot of people. Can you say he was naive? Can you say that he should come out and make a correction, a retraction? Yeah, I guess. The problem is that on one hand, there's the idea that making him focus on what he did before means that he can't focus on the now. But on the other hand, Derek Chauvin is still in prison, and he probably should issue a retraction in order to get to help Derek Chauvin get out of prison. I'm half on half on it. I think he should issue a retraction and admit that George Floyd died of an overdose and not because of the police involvement, and that the people who were arrested for it should be out. They shouldn't be accessories to murder or charged with murder. I mean, maybe you can say police brutality, but it seems like no. Like, since the beginning, people were like, no, that's standard procedure. Maybe not the most appropriate time to use it, but that restraining technique is standard. God damn traffic. Anyways, so Mike Johnson didn't always get it right. Am I disappointed that Jordan didn't get in? Well, as a member of the military, you have to kind of remember that while I'm not a warmonger, and I kind of joke around saying that I am occasionally, I'm not. I think tyrants should be removed, but it would be preferable to do it with peace if possible. And maybe it's getting me to a point where I'm like, yeah, foreign involvement. 20 years, we replaced the Taliban with the Taliban. Now that's mostly due to Obama pulling all our troops out and allowing the Taliban to reinitiate their recruitment, which was a big part of it, and then it was part of Joe Biden basically just fleeing with his tail between his legs when we could have stopped it. But you know, it is what it is. There were a lot of mistakes on both sides of the aisle that allowed that to happen. But for Jordan, maybe John James was just making an excuse, okay? Let's pretend that he was just making an excuse that Michigan's military is not dangerously low on supplies, and that the military in general is not dangerously low on supplies, despite the fact that we sent a lot of our supplies overseas. Let's just say that John James was making an excuse. But I still want Jordan to be Speaker of the House instead of head of the Intelligence Committee or whatever other committees he's in charge of. And the thing is, it's despite everyone online saying like, no, Jordan would be the best choice. He'd be awesome at it. Like, everyone should agree on it, and that anyone who disagrees should be primaried. How many of those people have actually looked up all of Jordan's voting positions? Like, how many people have actually looked at everything that he has voted for and said? I mean, we're talking about the people who work directly with the guy. Now, you could say that a lot of them were corrupt or they're rhinos and therefore they didn't like him because of some of his positions. Yeah, I don't know, man. But since a lot of those guys endorsed Donald Trump, you know, maybe they have a perspective that a lot of these keyboard warriors don't. And I'm kind of a keyboard warrior, right? I'm talking out my own behind, just looking from the outside in, from a detached reality from the whole situation, and hopefully not letting my emotions get the better of me. But again, in all these situations, emotions is always going to play a part of it. There's no one person in the world who is completely logical, who can completely detach themselves from their own feelings on a situation. Now, some people can, to an extent, but I don't think it's 100% possible to do so. Because it would make you unhuman. You're gonna at least be like annoyed that everyone else is acting on emotion, right? And then they voted in Mike Johnson, whose record is pretty good, who's basically unoffensive to everybody, who may or may not we'll see if he's a pushover, because he promised to fund Ukraine and Israel. Now, I don't agree with either of those positions. Israel has more than enough money to buy their own munitions. They can take out debt in order to pay for munitions too if they have to. I mean, if the United States has to be in huge, massive debt at all times, forever, then why can't other countries do it too? Why is America the one who always has to go into more and more and more debt with everyone else in the world? Why can't Israel go into some debt and pay for their munitions? It's like, hey, we'll manufacture more munitions, but you gotta pay the normal price for it, or maybe we'll give you a bulk discount or something, right? Why do we have to give them stuff for free? Okay? Why is it always that we gotta give other countries stuff for free with no guarantees of repayment? Why on an international level are we acting like socialists? So, like, someone answer that question for me. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. At least give us like an IOU or something like that. I mean, that's what we did in World War II, wasn't it? We basically told Great Britain, is like, hey, we're gonna ship you all this stuff, but you're gonna pay us back. You know, at the time, a lot of people were like, no, we're not gonna take an IOU. Because what happens if they lose the war and they get conquered by Germany? They'll never pay us back. We'll just be in the hole. But for God's sake, we know Israel is not going to lose against Hezbollah and Hamas. Just those two. And we have 2 super carriers and a MEU in the area. Now, again, a MEU is not that big, only about 2,500 people. But I don't think Syria, I don't think Iran is going to get involved, or China, or Russia, when there's that much American firepower in the area. I'm not like a doomer like a lot of people, like kind of like Glenn Beck is, about like, hey, we're going to go into World War III over this. Now, maybe that's, as like someone like Tim Pool would say, the normacy bias, that it can't possibly happen, so therefore it won't happen. Nah. Because I've been paying attention to China Uncensored and China Unscripted too. And a lot of the guests they have are also doomers, thinking that Taiwan is going to be invaded. But based on analysis of every aspect of the Chinese government, it appears that they are too weak currently, both politically, financially, and domestically, in order to actually carry out such an invasion and hope that it actually succeeds. Because if the United States actually did get involved, 3-front war or not, China might probably be just screwed in general. Like, they'll just be completely incapable of doing it. Especially since now we're entering winter, which I think now is the time of year where there's a lot of cyclones over in the area, which would not help landing operations whatsoever. So, all this to go and to say, I disagree that we need to help Israel and Ukraine for free. Even Taiwan for free. So I disagree with Johnson on that. So that's a bad start. I also disagree with the fact that he defended, that he took the side of the liberals on George Floyd. That was before all the riots, too. And at the time, everyone was like, you gotta watch the video, you gotta watch the video. And I was like, why do I have to watch a video of a guy being killed? Or a guy dying? Like, what benefit is that? Like, the guy died, bunch of people took videos of it as he was dying. It seemed like none of them did anything to help. And based on the autopsy report, literally no one could have done anything to help. Like, the guy was OD'd. So everyone just used that video to manipulate the emotions of everyone in the country. But at the same time, the standard Democrat and Republican consensus is Israel is an ally. Israel needs to be protected. So the Republicans are pushing that, and all the Republicans agree, at least in Congress, at least on a superficial level. Besides Thomas Massie, but Thomas Massie does his own thing. Meanwhile, mainline Democrats like Joe Biden are also saying Israel needs to be protected, and it's torn his party in half. Muslims, BLM, socialist justice warriors, progressives have all turned against Joe Biden for it. Whereas a lot of the Jewish community is now ticked off at Democrats because they allowed all these crazy guys coming in who support Hamas. And I'm not saying Palestine. I'm just talking about straight up, a lot of these people are just straight up supporting Hamas. We all saw that video where that one lady was like, anything Hamas does is justified. So, the Democrats had ticked off all these minorities. Jewish people might end up voting for Republicans in 2024. Muslims might vote Republican because they don't like all the LGBT stuff. And you might have a lot of progressives and Muslims and Jewish people who might all just sit out, vote Kennedy, vote Cornel West, vote Green Party, because Cornel West is not even in the Green Party anymore. He's running as an independent, which depending on how many states he gets in, God, I hope Kennedy and Cornel West and the Green Party are all on the ballot in Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and Georgia and Arizona and Nevada. Then Wisconsin and Minnesota. If they are in those swing states, all three of them, it is going to be bad for Joe Biden. But what I'm getting at here, to stop beating around the bush, is Mike Johnson pushing for support of Israel is not as bad as you might think. Now, I still think we shouldn't have to pay for it. We should give them an IOU or have them go into debt to pay for the munitions, which they would be upset about because we've been giving free stuff to Ukraine. So they'd be like, why do we have to pay for it? It's like, good point. Let's start charging Ukraine too. But, Mike Johnson's thinking on this is, even though he voted against Ukraine funding this entire time, he might be thinking that there's a lot of Republicans who still like the war, and that MAGA is going to vote MAGA no matter what. So maybe he should fund Ukraine and Israel because it ticks off all the Democrat voters when the Democrats also vote in this stuff. And that's going to hurt Democrats more than it's going to hurt Republicans in the general election. I'm not 100% sure on that. It's an interesting thought experiment that he might just change his mind because he knows that while a lot of the primary candidates might get booted out for supporting Ukraine funding, he might realize that, hey, as Speaker of the House, I'm going to probably get in on the primaries anyways. I'm not going to get kicked out of the House. I'm gonna win my district. And if we get rid of rhinos who support all this stuff, we'll get replaced by people MAGA votes in. Like, I could hurt my career slightly, but destroy the rhinos' career and destroy a bunch of Democrats' careers too. Who knows? Who knows? Maybe. But I don't think it's worth it. I don't think it's worth it, honestly. We'll see with Mike Johnson. I don't know if Jordan would have actually been better. But there is a lot about Mike Johnson that I like. A lot that he's done that I like. And I did point out one thing yesterday on Red Eagle Politics stream. Or was it Red Eagle Politics? No, it was Matt Christensen's. I was on both last night. On Matt Christensen's live stream, I pointed out that, hey, maybe if Mike Johnson does support Ukraine and Israel funding, he said that he will need a few concessions. What happens if one of those concessions is that, hey, Democrats, I'll support this, but only if you support impeaching Joe Biden? I honestly think that I really hope he does that. I really hope he does that, because if he does, oh my God, people's opinion on him, like, progressive mainstream media already hates the guy, but if he goes that far, the meltdown on like The View, MSNBC, CNN will be the best. It will be so funny. The Democrats would absolutely refuse to do that, and then the next day the Republicans will like put out all their evidence showing that Joe Biden is guilty, and the mainstream media would have to cover it just because of the deal that Johnson tried to make. And it would just absolutely destroy the Democrats. It would just cause so much hysteria that I don't even care if it would hurt the Republicans' political chances in the election, just because it would just be so funny. I don't really like the Republicans, man, anyways. I like Donald Trump. I like a few of the MAGA Republicans. But it'd be like given an offer that they can't possibly accept, but at the same time they can't possibly refuse. Because who knows? Now, you wouldn't break up anyone in the Democrat Party, but it would just cause so much screaming that I'm fairly certain that the Democrats would just look completely and utterly unhinged. But anyways, I'm just very interested in finding out exactly what kind of concessions he's going to ask for. So I'm half and half on him. I think he's better than McCarthy. Definitely an interesting thing that he even got in the first place. It makes me wonder how long we've been doing this stuff. Like, for instance, how many speakership runs have we had in America's history where the speaker got in on the first vote? How many times was there an opportunity for people to hold out like Matt Gaetz did, and for the parties to vote in a speaker who was less experienced, but would have been way better overall. How many great men in our history never got a chance to shine because the establishment had their grips on everything? Yeah, it makes you think about it. But anyways, if you want to figure out like what Mike Johnson is voted for and all the other stuff, I'm not gonna release that other video, even though I mean I might just if I release that other video, I'll make a short little video before it, just saying, hey guys, the next video coming out is about Mike Johnson, and I say Gary Johnson the entire way through. Just know that. I might have to figure out how to edit stuff, and I would go in at the beginning of the video, put in a little edit saying, hey, I messed up on the name, ignore it, and I just put it out there anyways. But it was like 45 minutes anyways. It's kind of long. A lot of people are not going to like it, just because it's going to get annoying to them. But yeah, I mean, that's all I got to say on it. Yep, so I appreciate you guys listening, and I'll see y'all later.